Hey, what's up, guys? It's Levi with Project Junkeez, and today I really appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm going to hopefully give you guys a few nuggets, but we're going to go over a little bit of history of me and where I came from and how I started the business and how we got into doing all of this and what I really like to do and how I can help you guys. So let's jump into it. So I really want to get started with where I started, which was in 2015. There was an interesting series of events. And I met my wife in late 2014, and through the next 9 months of the time that I met her, no, we didn't have a kid, thank God. But through those next 9 months, not only did I lose my job, she lost her job, and then on top of that, we got married. So we spent a bunch of money, and we also had $4,000 worth of bills every month that we had to pay with no jobs. So it was an interesting time, to say the least. But to give you some backstory, I was managing an Ace Hardware while I was going to school for mechanical engineering. I was in school for close to 5 years with still no degree. However, I was pumping it out. I was working full time at the time of going to school. And I thought that I was going to be with Ace for a long time, which looking back now, I can see a completely different train of thought. But at that time, I had hopes of opening other stores with this owner and potentially opening a store of my own. And that ended up not panning out. I had a falling out with the owner. And from there, I was left jobless at the same time that my wife was jobless. And like I said, we had about $4,000 worth of bills to pay every month and no money. So the next step of what to do is was kind of like in the air. We weren't sure. We were actually getting ready to get married because we met in October of 2014. And I think I proposed 6 months after we met, and then we were married 3 months later. So all of that happened really fast. And I think I lost my job maybe a month before we were married. So I also had a wedding to pay for. So there was a lot of different things going on at the same time. And we were, pretty scared to say the least, but you fast forward, I think everything turned out all right. What ended up happening was we got back from our honeymoon and I took a job working for Orkin Pest Control, the commercial sector. And I took that job from her dad, which is now my father-in-law. And I was kind of at a low, if we're going to be completely honest, right? Pride is kind of crushed. You lost your job. You're still trying to pay for stuff, but you don't have any money. And then you're taking a job from your new wife's father. Definitely felt that was like a low point in my life. However, I did the Orkin thing for about 9 months. And in that time period, I was also working on Project Junkeez. And so shortly before I lost my job at Ace, I had started Project Junkeez, kind of. What I did was I was just doing small jobs on the side. I, had these ghetto business cards made up, they were super official. And I was just doing like fence jobs and, small interior jobs like installing toilets and things like that, because I had grown this customer base from the 5 years that I had been at Ace. I had the same customers coming in all the time, and they were just asking me, hey, could you help me with this? Or can you do this over the weekend? And I love making money. So yeah, absolutely. Why not? So that was kind of how Project Junkeez was born. And I didn't think a whole lot of it. But my wife surprised me at our wedding. She actually had my groom's cake made with the Project Junkeez logo. And at the time, I'm not going to lie, like on our wedding day, I'm looking at the groom's cake and I'm like, I think you could have done better. If I'm being completely honest, and that's not trying to be a jerk. I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big Marvel fan, and I would have thought that maybe she would have gone that direction. But it turns out that she had a lot more foresight than I did. And we know that now, but it's kind of ironic to go back and think about it. So, but so anyways, at that time, she thought more about Project Junkeez than I did, really. I was just doing some small jobs here and there. And then we got back from our honeymoon and I took the job at Orkin. Basically what I would do is I'd get up about 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd go and do my route for Orkin. I'd get it done as quickly as I possibly could. And then I would get home between anywhere 1 and 3 o'clock. And then from there, I would start working on Project Junkeez. And so I would grind Project Junkeez for the next 4 to 6 hours. And that would be anything from, online marketing to social media, to actually doing the work. So I would go and work for Orkin, and then I would go and work on somebody else's house. So I remember doing jobs, like fixing door handles and all kinds of things like that. And so I did that with Orkin for about 9 months, but I would say it was probably maybe 3 months in to like really grinding on both ends that Project Junkeez started to gain enough traction to where I was a little overwhelmed. So Orkin was taking up, my Monday through Friday from, 5 to 2. And after that, I continued to do that grind with Project Junkeez for a long time, and it wore for sure. Like, it was wearing me down. And I remember spending a lot of time contemplating, okay, do I go all in on this, and just risk it all? Or do I, continue with the stable job of Orkin, which is just barely paying my bills? I was making $4,000 a month, and we had $4,000 a month of expenses. So that was tough. Now, my wife did get another job, so that helped, obviously. But so it was really a toss-up as to, what I should do. Obviously, I was not happy working for Orkin. I spent my days working for Orkin, crawling under, restaurant equipment in the back, and dealing with roaches and rodents and things like that. And I don't wish that on anybody. It's definitely not a fun job. So anybody who's a pest control technician, man, good on you, because it's too much for me. I can tell you that. But so I didn't want to do Orkin, but at the same time, I didn't want to give up the income, because I felt that, okay, if I go all in on Project Junkeez and I don't get phone calls from customers, what am I going to do? And I'm like, that fear never really goes away for me. Like, I still today think, oh man, what if I don't get any phone calls today? And I've been in business, 10 years, and it's never happened. I always get phone calls, but I still have the fear of that happening for whatever reason. And I would say that was probably the biggest hindrance to me actually taking the leap. I can tell you on the opposite side of the spectrum, that wasn't a hindrance, was the support that I had in my life. And this is a huge deal. So if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're not supportive, then obviously you may want to reevaluate, because my wife was super supportive. And she put all of her faith in me, and it was, hey, you got this. You need to go ahead and take the leap. Like, you're not happy at Orkin. That's, causing friction in our marriage. And I know that you can be successful doing this, so you need to do it. And then on top of that, my best friend, Arian, I remember very specifically spending time on the phone while in my Orkin truck, talking to Arian about, man, do I take this leap? Do I quit Orkin and just jump and just do it and hope everything works out? And he's always been this way, but he just kind of laughs and he's like, yeah, of course you should. Like, you got this. It's not a big deal. And it is a huge deal, because it's like, I have, a wife now to provide for. It's not just me. And I got a house that I got to pay for, and vehicles and so on and so forth. So it is a big deal, but, hindsight, obviously they knew who I was and what I was capable of doing. And, thank God that I had that support, because that was a big deal. So the day finally came, where I did quit Orkin, and it was an interesting day. So I got to the office to pick up my Orkin truck probably about, 6:00. And I just remember sitting in the truck, looking at my phone, looking at Project Junkeez text messages, and just thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm just like, I'm in the Orkin truck thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. Got my full Orkin get up with my, white Orkin shirt and the, what do they wear? The khakis? Oh no, commercial wears gray pants. But, I just remember, this baggy shirt. It's just too much information, but regardless, sitting in the truck, I was ready to be done. And so I walked back into the office, that morning, and I sat down with my, branch manager, and I told him, I said, hey, listen, I think I'm done. And he looks at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, like, I think I'm done here. I think I'm done with Orkin. I don't think that this is for me. I don't think I can do this anymore. And he's like, okay, so you're putting in your 2 weeks. And I said, no, like I'm done today. Like I'm just done. And he obviously he's like not thrilled because somebody's got to take care of the route. Right. But I'm in that place of like, I've already checked out and I'm ready to walk out the door and go all in on a company that I'm building, which is going to be my future. And I think that he took that hint pretty quickly because he kind of looked at me and he was like, okay, I get it. And that was it. And I got up and I walked out and I did not look back at Orkin, let me tell you. But that's kind of how Project Junkeez started. So after I left Orkin, I plugged into PJ, no longer this, 2 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock deal. It was now all day, every day, Project Junkeez. And how do I build this company that is going to build my future? And in doing so, that constant hustle really paid off because the phone didn't stop ringing. And so I quickly went from doing these small handyman jobs of, changing locks and installing toilets and fixing fences and fixing drywall and all that kind of stuff to larger jobs. And so I started getting larger fence jobs and I started getting flooring jobs and backsplash tile jobs. And from that point, I actually got my first bathroom, and I'd never done a bathroom renovation before, like just being straight up with you, right? And this is 10 years ago. However, I wasn't lacking in that department. I had grown up on a job site, basically both sides of the family. So I had a construction background, if you will. Even though you're a kid on a construction site, like you end up retaining a lot more than you think that you do. So, and then on top of that, I've always been the handy kind of do-it-yourself person. So I was, very fluent with tools and how to do particular tasks, whether that be, in the home or in the garage or on a vehicle or so on and so forth. So I was always kind of keen on figuring out how to do something. And so when it came to this bathroom, that was exactly what I did. I did all of my research and my back end, and I found people and resources that taught me and helped me do it right. Because one of my biggest concerns, right, is building out a shower and then having a water issue, which, like I said, I've been in business now for 10 years and I've never had a water issue, knock on wood. But that being said, it's still one of those things where it's like you're going into a project that you've never done before. How do you handle this? It's a little overwhelming, kind of scary, so on and so forth. So anyways, fast forward through that project, and I started taking on a lot more bathrooms and a lot more kitchens. And the projects just seemed to get bigger. And now I would say at any given point in time, I'm booked out 6 to 8 months, which is a great problem to have. And I have a couple of teams running, and the company itself is growing and doing well. And I've poured a lot of time, energy, and effort into social media as well. And so hopefully all of my work is or will pay off. But I can tell you this right now that as of up to now, it has. And I'll give you guys a little insight into some of the financials early on. So when I first started PJ, I told you I was doing Orkin and PJ at the same time. So I started Project Junkeez in July of 2015. And over the course of the next, I guess that would be 6 months or around 6 months, I grossed about 60 to 70,000. I think it was somewhere around $66,000, which is, it's nothing, to write home about. But in 6 months, having never ran a business of my own, I would say that was pretty good. And so that allowed me not only to stockpile a little bit of cash because I was still making money with Orkin, but it also allowed me to get my feet wet and have some money to reinvest into the company, which is exactly what I did. So I started buying more tools and a trailer and so on and so forth. And now you fast forward to where we are. I've been doing this for 10 years, and we're rocking and rolling. And like I said, I've got, multiple teams moving. And so we're going to keep on moving with Project Junkeez. But, I will say that like construction is it's not my end all be all. It's not, what I absolutely love to do. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I love Star Wars more than I love construction. But how can you make a living with Star Wars, right? Well, who would have known that you can do that kind of stuff? But we are, I think one of the biggest issues that I had, or one of the problems, at least in my time of transition from, going from a flip phone to a smartphone, and like kind of living through that app movement, there's an app for everything. There's a big piece that like we were not taught to be creative. We were not taught to, go out and be ambitious and start your own business. We were taught to do things a very specific way. We were taught to go to school. And when you got done with high school, you were to go to college, spend your 4 years, get your bachelor's degree. And then you were to go and get a job that you're going to work for the next 30, 40, 50 years. And we were all taught to think that way. And now in 2024, you see the difference. Like yes, we are still taught to go to school. Yes, we're still taught to get a college education, but there's a lot more leeway in how you can be successful. We have influencers and we have YouTubers and we have entrepreneurs and we have, business owners like myself that start construction businesses or start pressure washing businesses or whatever that looks like. And so I think now it's viewed a little looser on how we can do things and how we can be successful. Whereas 15 years ago, as I was going through that transition, things were a little bit different. And it was more like you can't be successful if you don't have a college education. And that actually was quite prevalent in my life because my mom was a huge advocate for you cannot be successful without a college degree. You're going to school. Make sure that you stay in school and you get your degree. So to say the least, she was not thrilled when I dropped out. And however, you fast forward a few years and she did come to me and she said, "Hey, you were right. You can be successful without the college degree." So now with my siblings, there's a 13-year age gap between me and my sister. And then I've got a younger brother as well. They get a little bit more freedom with choosing whether or not they're going to go to school or they're going to do something else. But bottom line is, we were taught to go to school and we were taught to, get a job and not think creatively. And I think now, hindsight is always a bitch, but I would probably opt to do things a little bit different. And I may not even go into construction if I were to go back, right? Construction just ended up being a good fit for me because I grew up on the job site. And then on top of that, I was in school for mechanical engineering. And it's a low barrier to entry service-based business. So you can get into doing a handyman business, mounting TVs and installing faucets and installing locks and door handles and things like that. And it's a super low barrier to entry because just about anybody can do those things. Well, at least you would think, but it turns out that people will pay you to do those things, which is great. That's how I got started. But I think that the opportunity to do that now is probably a little more prevalent than it was then. And if I were to go back, I would probably go into, something else like prop design or cosplay or something like that, which I know is kind of crazy. But outside of that, around the same time that I started Project Junkeez, I actually was in the process of starting Trilogy Brew with Arian. And if you don't already know, Trilogy Brew is a coffee shop that I own. And I actually own two of them. We're opening our third now. And I'm trying to do a couple more over the next few years. But the whole deal behind the coffee shop I never wanted to open a coffee shop. It didn't start that way. And to be quite honest, if I had to go back, I probably wouldn't start a coffee shop either. But the way that this happened is my buddy Arian and I were just kind of talking about, opening up a beer spot, craft beer spot. And I looked at him and I was like, well, let's just do it. Fuck it. Let's do it. And he's like, okay, kind of shaking his head. And I'm 100% serious. And I don't think that he took it that way at all. But anyways, we were at church the next Sunday and I was like, hey, so are we going to do this or what? And he's like, do what? What are you talking about? I was like, we're going to open this spot, right? And so anyways, we end up going down the rabbit trail and, do all of the things from coming up with a name and writing a business plan and all the fun stuff. But anyways, we had somebody who was investing in us, and they wanted to invest about $250,000 to get us started. And what ended up happening was his wife was diagnosed with cancer and he had to back out. And Arian and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, well, how do we keep this dream alive? And we said, well, let's do this. Let's do like a mobile beer spot, so like a beer trailer. You go to events, serve beer, you make your money, you go home, boom, no problem, right? Well, in Texas, that's a problem. TABC says that you can't do that without a brick and mortar. And even with a brick and mortar, you have to permit every event that you do. So that was kind of like a real halt. And so we asked the same question, right? So, all right, well, how do we keep the dream alive? And we came up with coffee because our wives love coffee. Everybody loves coffee. And we can do coffee mobile without having to have, an alcohol license. So fast forward, we end up buying this junky ghetto trailer off of a Facebook Marketplace for like $600, and we completely gutted it. And this is all while I'm doing Project Junkeez and partially while I'm doing Orkin. We're spending our nights working on this trailer, building this trailer into this crazy coffee trailer. And I think it took us, I don't know, a couple of months, 2-3 months to get this thing ready to go. And we did it for $5,000 on my credit card. And that was everything. That was the trailer. That was building the trailer out. That was buying the equipment like the espresso machine, which we got from an old Coffee Buddy commercial espresso machine that needed some work. So anyways, we did this on super lean budget. And then we probably did the trailer game for about a year. And it was every bit of hell that you could possibly think that it would be. It was always something. The water pump would break, or the generator wouldn't start, or the trailer had a flat. And again, it was always something. And we finally were like, okay, let's just find a place that we can be successful, park this thing, and let's go from there. And so what we ended up doing was partnering with HEB, and we paid to have the electrical run outside of HEB, and we basically parked our trailer outside of HEB, and we did that for probably close to a year. And it was still tough because it's a trailer. Texas is hot. It's 100 degrees outside. We're trying to make coffee, trying to deal with employees. Arian's got a full-time job. I have a full-time job, right? And Project Junkeez. So we had a lot on our plate, and it was tough. Now, we finally had an opportunity come up with Trilogy that was a lady selling her coffee shop. She was trying to get out of the business, so she was selling her coffee shop in Old Town Spring. And we were like, okay, well, we're interested. And so I didn't have any money. Arian didn't have any money. And we did have a friend who was interested in investing in us. So he ended up fronting most of the cash in order to buy this lady out. And that was kind of how we got started with Trilogy. Now, Trilogy almost died, I don't know, probably a dozen times. The biggest thing was we had no idea what we were doing when it came to payroll or cost of goods or running a business or anything like that. And so, yeah, fast forward, we learned a lot of lessons, and now Trilogy is to a place to where it's a successful business, but it took us time to get to that. And when I say time, I'm saying probably 4 or 5 years to get to a place of not having to worry about, how Trilogy is going to make payroll and things like that, which it sucks to say that out loud, but at the same time, it's like, it's the lessons that you get to learn as you're going through the journey. And we've learned a lot of them. So now we're working on building out our third location, which will hopefully be open within the next month or so. And then I would like to do probably 2 more over the course of the next 3 to 3.5 years. And that'll put us at 5. And then from there, we'll either open up 10 more or we'll sell the business, one of the two. But either way, there's going to be a payoff. And obviously that's kind of, when you go into business, that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for the money. And money is not necessarily everything. It's not all about buying the fancy shit, but it is opportunity, and it's also a tool. And if you can learn to use money as a tool, just like you would a tool in construction, then your own money can make you a lot more money. And so that brings me to business in itself. And that's actually what I'm really passionate about, is entrepreneurship. Like I said, construction is not my end all be all. Coffee is not my end all be all. It's really the business is what I like. And there's something about, in construction, you build out this bathroom and you have this finished product, and you get to look at it and you're like, man, I built that. And that's kick ass and it's awesome. But then when you have a business, it's kind of the same thing, right? You get to build this business, mold it and shape it the way that you want. And then when you get to the end, you get to look at this business and be like, I built that. Like, I built that from nothing. Now, we have this machine. And to me, that's kind of what gets me jazzed. And so that's why I love business so much. Like I said, it's not about the construction, or it's not about the coffee. It's not even necessarily about the money. It's just kind of about leveling up and facing Alex Hormozy says, facing the next boss and beating the next boss, right? Because like, if you're in a video game, the whole goal is to level up, and so you can beat the next boss. And I kind of feel the same way with business. That's kind of what it boils down to for me. I really appreciate the next challenge. And if I don't have a challenge on my plate, then I typically have a tendency to get myself into one, just subconsciously without even paying attention, because that's kind of what I gravitate to. But anyways, so all of that to be said, business is really what I'm passionate about. And I wanted to, let's see here. I had a few nuggets that I wanted to go into to give you guys. Oh yeah, I can talk a little bit about my younger years, and how business was kind of playing into who I was even when I was a little kid. So I was always the kid that was financially motivated and trying to find a way to make money. And so I remember doing lemonade stands every weekend. We lived in this house in Southern California that was on the corner of an extremely busy street, and then a cross street. And so we had this huge ass lemon tree in the back. And so I would go and I would pick our lemons, which were obviously fresh. And then I'd make the lemonade, get everything set up on my lemonade stand out on the corner, and then get my signage all done. And then I'd go out there and peddle my lemonade. And, it's funny now, because you look back and you're like, I can see all of the same tendencies that I have now, even, as a little kid. And it's just kind of funny how, people go one direction or the next. But I remember distinctly, I had a time when I was in my office at Ace, and I had some family stop by, and they made a comment to me that I didn't think much of then, but they were like, you're really working for somebody else. And I always thought you would own your own business. And I kind of chuckled it off like, what? Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And again, it turns out that like the people in your life, a lot of times you have people outside of yourself that kind of see you and know you better than you do. Because obviously I was still trying to figure things out. So, on that, my wife, had some really good insight. I was in school for mechanical engineering, and she actually asked me one day, we're in the car driving, and she asked me, she's like, hey, what are you going to school for? And I told her, I said, well, what do you mean? What am I going to school for? You already know I'm going to school for mechanical engineering. That's been the plan for the last 10 years. And she's like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, why are you going to school? And I couldn't answer that question. And it was just like because that's what you do. And it was really like that moment that was like, okay, this isn't for me. This isn't the right path. And this was all during the Orkin Project Junkeez startup and so on and so forth. And Anyways, people in your life can have some real insight into who you are, so pay attention. But back to the lemonade stand and younger me, I feel like that was always a part of my DNA. Now looking back, obviously it took me some time to figure that out, but I'm so grateful that I had the people in my life that I did that, kind of pointed me in that direction. Yeah, it's been a crazy journey, super rewarding, super fun, but business is really what I love. And so, I wanted to get to the nuggets that I've got for you guys, that there is so much misinformation out there, and that we are taught, instant gratification, and that nobody wants to put in the work and the time that is required to make something successful. And that's such a huge deal because that's everything. Consistency and the time and energy that it takes. I've been doing Project Junkeez for 10 years. I've been doing Trilogy for 10 years. Like, of course you want everything a lot faster, but you can't expect it. The expectation needs to be that this is going to take me a lot longer than the idea that I have in my head. You're not going to build this thing in 6 months. You're not going to build this thing in a year or whatever. I've got a funny story that'll kind of recap on some of this. So my wife and I mentioned the prop making and the cosplay and stuff like that. My wife and I do some of this in our in all of our spare time that we have. And one of those hobbies is leatherworking and leather craft. And so I like to make, holsters and belts and things like that. And so we were working on some costumes for a convention that we were going to go to. And we're working on making belts for these costumes. And I had, already knocked mine out. I'd never done leatherworking before. And we went out and bought all this equipment to do all this leather work and so on and so forth. And I was able to knock my stuff out. And she was getting so frustrated because she was having the hardest time like cutting and then doing the edges on the leather and so on and so forth. And I had to explain to her, like, and it's not that I had to, because I know that she understands this, but I've been working with my hands for as long as I can remember. I've been in the garage, I've used tools, I've used Dremels, I've used knives, all of these things. And so there's this muscle memory that is just years and years of using tools and knowing what they feel like in your hands and things like that. And that's not the same for my wife. She hasn't spent years and years using these tools. And so we're sitting there, we're working on leather, and she's getting super frustrated because she's like, you just picked up this leather working stuff and you're already great at it. Why can I not pick up this leather working stuff and be great at it? And the point is that it's taken years of using tools and practice of working with my hands in order to be able to do something like that. And that brings me right back to, we kind of expect this instant gratification, especially with social media and YouTube University and things like that. But good things really take a lot of time, and you cannot be afraid to put that time and energy in, even if it takes the next decade to build what it is that you want. Believe it or not, time flies, so that decades can fly by. But a couple of things for you. Alex Hormozi said he's got a saying, which is like one of my absolute favorites, and it's that volume negates luck. And so I'll give you an example of that. If you are trying to get a job and you submit your resume to 10 different places, you don't get any calls back. Are you going to give up because you didn't get the job or you didn't get a job? Or are you going to submit another 990 resumes if that's what it takes? Because the point is that if you submit 1,000 resumes, the chances of you not getting a job is super slim, right? And that basically takes all of the circumstances that may be holding you back, whether that be, where you were born or disabilities or whatever that might be. And instead you use volume as your friend, then luck is going to have nothing to do with it. You're going to overwrite the system. So anyways, that's one of my favorite sayings that he's got. And it goes right along with that people just dramatically underestimate how much work it takes to win. And that's what we want to do here is we want to win. So I'm going to leave you guys with 3 nuggets, hopefully that will help you. if you are trying to start a business or you're, I don't know, trying to become more fluent in financial management. But I want to try to help as many people as possible to not be broke, because in 2024, there's no reason to be broke nowadays, especially not with social media. So, all right. So a few nuggets that I've got for you. Number one, the right partner changes everything. So like I said, I met my wife, and she was the most support that I could ever ask for. And if I would not have had her, then things would have turned out very different. And so I cannot stress enough having the right partner. The second thing that I would say is that you need to learn that money is a tool. And when tools are used properly, they make you more money. Don't look at money as just this thing to support your day-to-day life. It needs to be used as a tool. And then the last and probably most important is learn how to delay gratification and consistently do the work. So consistently, over time, do the work and put in the reps. And that is where the success comes from. So that's all I've got for this one, guys. I hope that I was able to help you level up. And if you enjoyed listening to this, I would really appreciate if you would share it with a friend, or hell, even write a review if you want to do that. And as always, don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the little heart, and do all the things.